seconds to make sure that it starts. Perfect. We are live. So welcome to everyone who is watching to our first ever event. My name is Svetlana. If it's a bit too long for you, you can just call me Lana. This is my cool name. Okay, I hear myself twice, sorry. I'm Lana, and yeah, basically I've been in product and tech for the last 12 years. Here in Berlin, I worked at Visual Meta as a product manager, and then I spent 4 years as a VP of product in Latana and Dahlia Research. And on this, my path to in career and leadership, I kind of always struggled with the fact that there's not enough good sources about leadership. It's a lot of books, it's a lot of information, but it always feels a bit high level, and I was always missing like concrete examples, cases, and some kind of know-how type of information. It just felt that the conversation stays really high level and it doesn't go in depth. And then I spoke about this with my friend, and then she told me, well, why wouldn't you start this in-depth conversations? And I'm just like, yeah, well, why not? So I started a community. It's called No Blah Blah Leadership, and it's a community for leaders in product and tech. And basically the main goal is to facilitate those in-depth conversations about leadership, especially leadership in product and tech, and make sure that we can exchange knowledge and exchange our expertise. And for the first event, I was thinking about the topic, how to work effectively with data science, because from my perspective, this is like a super hot topic right now. There are more and more companies hiring data science teams or data science people, but there's a lot of questions how to work with them. And there's not that many answers. I think that by default, we're all trying to just approach the same as we do with the developers. And from my experience, it actually rarely works. So I thought that would be nice to open the series of events with this topic and check what are the best practices. And like when I think about this, I immediately thought about Claudio, first of all, because he has a lot of experience in working with machine learning and data science type of projects, but also because he's for me like the great example of this kind of no blah blah type of person. We worked together for 2 years, and I was always super fascinated by Claudio's natural leadership skills, and at the same time super like structured, analytical, like no blah blah approach to everything. So I decided that he's going to be our perfect first guest. He is leading product right now at Hostel World, and before that he was building products, machine learning products at Zalando, AirHelp, and Visual Meta. That's actually exactly where we met. So Claudio, hi.
Hi, thanks for the introduction. I think it's good to know that you had this perspective on me. I had the very same, let's say, perspective on you. It was really fun, I think, to work with you, because we had no blah blah blahs. We just said like, okay, what we need to do, and we just go forward. So that's a really cool thing. And thanks for inviting me to open this amazing series. It's like I felt that I wanted to have that actually when I started the leadership. So I think it's a good initiative.
Now we have it. Now we have it. So before we start, just a couple of words about the format. It's a simple Q&A. I prepared a set of questions for Claudio on topics related to the actual team structure, goals, objectives, and the processes around execution. And I'm just gonna ask them all. And if you have questions, I see there are many people on YouTube, just post them in chat and I'm gonna read them to Claudio as well. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Oh, perfect.
Let's have this conversation.
Let's have this conversation. The first topic and the first actually question before we go deep dive, maybe Claudio, you can tell us a bit more about your experience and the products you worked for.
Yeah, sure. So I started my career as a software engineer. So I was a software engineer for roughly 9 years or something, mostly in the back end. Then in my last years as a software engineer, I was working as a research engineer for Samsung Electronics in their research department. And there I found my passion for data science. So I had like one colleague that was great to teach, let's say, and he was pairing with me. So I really fell in love. I started being interested in computer vision as the area to focus on machine learning. Then at the very same time, I fell in love for product management and like how to build products using data science because of the research environment. And I moved to Germany roughly now 7 or 8 years ago to work for Visual Meta. There I was leading the teams related to data engineering and data science. We were building classification of products across the websites we had. So, I mean, we had like millions of products that had to be categorized in the right spot, and customers would be able to see it. There we had lots of like work on the fashion and the furniture and the lifestyle space. And then I moved to AirHelp to work on also building a data science team there, but mostly on the automation of processes, internal processes. And after that, I moved to Zalando. At Zalando, I was first working on the salon business of Zalando, which is basically trying to find the best outfits for the customer so they can feel confident and have like ideas on what to dress. So I was working on the automation and the support for the stylists on building the boxes, the outfit boxes for the customers. And inside of Zalando, I moved internally, and my last experience inside of Zalando was leading the product management for the recommendations team. So everything related to the recommender systems there, I was involved on the product management of that. And just recently, so this is everything in Germany. Then I moved to 1 year now to Portugal, where I'm head of product and tech for Hostelworld. And here I oversee the development of all the internal tools to support hostels to manage the inventory, and also everything related to data science, like automation of marketing operations, and also recommendations, ranking, sorting, everything related to personalization too. And that's it.
Thank you. Wow, like looks like it's literally every job that you had was related to data science.
Yeah, it's really like one thing that moves me, I would say. It's my happiness.
Now we all kind of convinced that we can trust you on everything related to this topic. So let's start. Let's start. I think the first area where I wanted to start is to actually the organizational structure of data science and how to position data science people inside the team, because the approaches that I see right now on the market, they either there's a dedicated team called data science where all the data scientists are coming together, or alternative approach is where data scientists are more embedded in cross-functional team together with engineers, with product design, and focus on specific area of the product. From your experience, have you seen anything else? Have you seen those two types? And what was more effective?
Yeah, I think it sounds silly, I think, because it's everything depends for. I've seen both scenarios, like both when you mentioned the dedicated teams only working on a specific product, data science product, and also when there's like a multidisciplinary team working on a specific area of the product. So there are like some advantages and advantages on disadvantages and advantages on each, but again, really depends on the structure of the company. One thing that I found that is most important before thinking about the team structure is how you structure your strategy. What are the goals that you have as a company? What are the team sizes? Like how much can you spend on resources? Because it's really like the problem is a resource allocation problem too. So, but first, I mean, I think the successful teams were really when we had a really clear vision of what we want to achieve as a company. Then we have like a really clear vision on what the product needs to look like. And after that, like how can we measure that? What are how can we make sure that the product or the vision that we want to aim for has a metric that we see if we're successful or not? Because if you have that really well defined, the team setup really depends on the strategy, because strategy is only a materialization of actions that you want to take to achieve your vision. So for example, at Visual Meta, we had a dedicated team to make sure that we could classify correctly all the products. So the scenario was we had lots of products coming from different partners, and we wanted to make sure that they were in the right place on our website. So we had a classification problem to solve. In that scenario, it was super clear that we had to maintain internal tools, because the teams making sure that the pages were correct, like the category managers, let's say, could work on ensuring the quality, that the pages were fulfilled or filled with items and so on. So it made sense that one team would be building internal tools and the strategies, the algorithms for that. When now in the scenario for Hostel World, which is like the recent experience, we have the data scientists embedded on the growth teams. So we are divided in growth teams. And there's one growth team called, for example, paid, that oversees everything related to the paid marketing area. And there are like 2 machine learning engineers just working on the optimizations, trying to understand the business, and they are embedded on the team. Yeah, Zalando, we had like the backend engineers together with machine learning engineers, because they were building the UI for that, they were building the backend, so they were really responsible for the whole like end-to-end, let's say, experience of the customer. But really depends. Like Zalando had resources to have, I don't know, lucky enough to have machine learning engineers only dedicated to one specific part of the problem of the company. Some other companies you don't, you have less resources, so you really need to think about how to optimize that. But the optimization really is super tight to if you have like a really good measurement, like a North Star metric, or a metric that you have only for your team. I don't know, a metric that is only for guidance on a specific period of your company. So that's it. So the flavor, it's really up to the needs. But if you have the clarity on the problem to be solved, the team setup is secondary, I would say. Yeah, it comes naturally. It's not secondary, but comes naturally. Yeah.
I see. And in terms of the actual pros and cons, I think like when we talk about cross-functional teams, this is more or less clear. Yeah, we have everyone united with one goal. But what about teams, dedicated data science team? What are the positive kind of characteristics of this setup?
I think so. So for the multidisciplinary team, I would like go back, go a little bit back. I think there is some disadvantages on for example, if you have a front-end person in the team, sometimes the front-end work would come just later. So if you're planning, and if you're running on Scrum and you have sprints and so on, probably the work of this person comes in the third sprint, so you would have to think about resource allocation more carefully, because some people will be idling until something like really tangible or visible to the customers would be live, let's say. So they're like the resource constraint you have there. On when you have like a dedicated data science team, I think the advantage is that you have more. That could be an advantage, I would say. I'm just thinking now that you have more brain and knowledge in the same room, let's say, about the same topic. So taking recommender systems as one example, probably would have like 3 machine learning engineers that are specialized in recommender systems, that they would be like debating and discussing for a better solution, instead of having like one person or one machine learning engineer embedded in a team full of like one backend, one front end, having ideas and so on that are like not necessarily related to the machine learning solution. And I feel that some teams you should have at least two people having the same role, let's say, in the same team, and that applies to data science as by experience seeing that. So I think that's it. But again, really depends. I mean, when you have multiple people, like I don't know, if you have like 5 machine learning engineers in the same team, it's also good because you can try different approaches at the very same time, and you have discussions, kind of real-time discussions on the advantages or disadvantages of one solution over the other. So like, I think the experimentation becomes a little bit faster, instead of having one machine learning engineer or 2 in a multidisciplinary team where they are discussing and they want to push something live, and then they have like other ideas on the way and they can't experiment, so things can get a little bit delayed, let's say. But I think it's more like on the experimentation point.
I see. That's actually like, there was also one of the main arguments when I work with data science team, to have a team data science together, specifically because they can exchange knowledge. They have like more collaboration rather than when they split into different areas.
And data science is really, most of the work is really, it's like an art, you have an idea, you know a little bit about one specific approach. Sometimes you read a paper that comes with like some innovative way of looking to the problem, and you really need to have this kind of conversation flowing. If you're usually alone, the tool set that you put out would be also narrowed, because it's only your experience, only your set of tools available, and having more people with different perspectives sometimes helps, because it's really like an art. It's like the art of taking lots of Lego pieces and trying to build your house, so it's
and like, talking about art, that's the second area of questions that I have is related how to measure art, or how to put objectives and goals on top of that. I think like, from your experience, what are the like general outcomes that business and product expects from data science people?
Well, I mean, I think so. I think the I'm not sure it's like some misconception, or like I'm overselling data science, but data science or machine learning products and so on, they are solutions. So like, they could be solved by a regular, let's say, software engineer building a backend with lots of logic that were decided by the business, so it's a solution. It's just like one another way to solve the problem. I just mentioned that, like, so the problem is the most important thing. Like, if you know exactly the problem that you want to solve and how you want to measure it, you don't need to care about the solution space. So taking the case for Visual Meta also, like the main goal of Visual Meta was to have the pages filled with products. So how can we make sure that if you look for the most specific fine-grained fashion product, you would find this product, across all the whole inventory. So we really were concerned of populating pages. So our metrics were about coverage of the pages, how many products are stuck on higher levels of the customer journey, like the breadcrumbs are always fulfilled and so on. And this has nothing to do with machine learning, So we were really aiming for solving a problem for the customers. Also, hostel world, like we want to make sure that when when our customers are coming to look for a hostel, they find the best offer, best prices. They find the ranking shows already the most valuable like assortment. Trying kind of like not avoiding, but trying to make sure that if you do a search, you find it immediately. Your session time is shorter because you found the most compelling product. This is applied, I don't know, for other companies too. So we don't need to think about machine learning per se. So once you have that clear, like you have the problem, you have the metric, what a success looks like, or what you think success looks like, then you can discuss like machine learning and use that. Because when you have that, you can also, perform A/B tests. You can perform customer interviews, and you can validate the different approaches of your let's say of your ideas on the data science solution. Yeah, but I think that's it. So
yeah,
it's mostly setting up really clear goals on what are the problems to be solved. Machine learning will be just another solution. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, by the way, for providing concrete examples from the companies that you worked for, because it like really explains for me, for example, what can it be. And then when you set the vision, or like you decide on like what problem you want to set, and then at some point you still have to go to your team, which is either data science team or a team where data science is embedded, and set some kind of OKRs or KPIs, or no, let's start with objectives like OKRs, or I don't know, quarterly or monthly goals.
Yeah.
What from your experience are good examples of those goals, and what are, if you also have not good examples?
Good examples, I think. Well, I think so. Visual Meta, for example, we had like a goal that there is one specific metric called F-score from like the information retrieval area, and it measures like how often we write out of the products that we classified. Like if the shoe is really a shoe, if the Pipto Pump Ballerina, which was my favorite, also like a tag there, was like had items there, and the ones that we thought that should be there, they would be there. So we had like set ourselves like the F-score, which is like from 0 to 1, should be above 95, 0.95. Also, we try to make sure that the whole pipeline of training and classifying all the products were below 24 hours. So every product that would come to our website, it will be visible like in the right position, at least in the upcoming day. So the team had like those like thresholds of metrics, and every quarter we were like just reviewing that. The very same happened, I don't know, to Zalando, where we wanted to make sure that the customers, they were really interacting with the recommender systems. So we had the interaction metrics related to that. At Hostel World, we have some direct margin metrics. So our paid team, like the marketing team, have to bring some levels of profitability, let's say, for the company. So the machine learning team is actually focusing on how, are we getting closer to the metric? Are we getting better, like better margin by having approach A or B and so on. So again, the metrics are really around the problems, like how can we measure, how success looks like for us. And then this is shared with the team. So like the team now knows this is our focus. These are the two metrics that we want to progress. Every quarter we review if we're like achieved or not, if we need to stretch more like the goals for ourselves. We see the progression, like can we really double every quarter or not? Is this are we reaching our limits where we can't control anymore, like how the market behaves, like how the demand uses our product and so on. So like again, it's really the OKR would be generally the very same kind of OKR that you would set for your team, if it's a data scientist team or not. Yeah, that I would say that's it. Like, is there any other doubt around that?
No, I actually
like to clarify?
One interesting question here in the chat on YouTube. What metrics enables data science team to work efficiently? Did you have bad metrics that you exchanged to be able to see progress? What was the journey with finding them? So yeah, that's basically all around those metrics that you just shared with us. How did you find them? Is there anything good or bad?
How did we find them? I think, how do we define? I think it's really asking the people in the higher levels of the business. I would say, like, you know, like when I joined Hostelworld, actually, I asked like my main stakeholders, like the executive of the team, like for example supply, and then for the marketing area, and I asked them like which are the three main things that you want to get solved in the next year. So, and they mentioned to me like, I wanted to get this sorted out, the second thing sorted out, and from there I was asking them like, okay, so what is the number that you like to see in the morning? So like, hey, actually Claudio did everything that he promised or aimed for. And I started from there. Then I discussed with like with the, I don't know, data teams, like, do we have the data to track that? Do we have easy access to the data source that moves all of the like every, you know, singular metrics that at the end moves the big one? Do we understand the relationship between the metrics? So it's really like a discovery process on trying to understand how to measure success of the problem you want to solve. And really after that is sharing. That's actually happened, and at also Hostelworld, we were measuring success for our automated bidding product. So we are bidding automatically on Google, and we were measuring the behavior of the market with one specific metric, like a combination of metrics that we decided. And after some time, we saw that there was like a plateau. This metric was not moving, and we were digging and trying to understand like what was actually causing that. And we found out that actually we had lots of assumptions that were not actually true. And we changed the metric. I mean, we just said like, okay, so what is actually true we want to achieve? Is this, we should look for the whole market? Should we look for a specific slice of the market? And we had other brainstorming sessions until we found, okay, this is the right metric we want to move on. So it's really hard to say when you're right or wrong until you say until you're right or wrong. Until you're right or wrong, or when you expect to have like some outcome and the thing doesn't happen, and you try to investigate what is coming up, and you always have one assumption or something you forgot to add to your discussions. So it's hard to say like exactly what is a good metric. also because depends on the business. Like if, I don't know, comparing Booking.com and Airbnb, they, even though they are like offering rooms, they offer rooms for different kinds of customers. So the recommendation engine for them could be totally different, like direction, or have different direction, and it will be measured differently. So even if you're in the same kind of space of the industry, it's really not like a right or wrong or good recipe for that. You need to experiment a lot. There are like some metrics that will help you. Like there are like this R metric. So you have like acquisition, yeah, return of the customers, retention. So like they are good. It's a good framework, let's say, to start having those discussions with your stakeholders. But at the end, I mean, the same metric won't work for all the business, even though it's like all the kind, they can be in the same area of the industry, let's say. Yeah.
Yeah. From what you're saying, I got an impression that actually to be able to set a successful metric always, like from the first time, you need to have a lot of experience. Like the more experience you have, the more you see what is going to work and what is not.
Well, I think experience helps. I mean, to have the shortcuts, but I think the question you should make is like, what is the number that if I see changing, I will be happy or sad? You know, like yeah. So if I see like one specific metric going down, should I care that now, or should I care that only if I see that going down after 3 months? You know, so I think it's questioning your product, like what makes me feel that I'm going the right direction. And you can pick one to start with. Could be, I don't know, click-through rate. You know, I want to increase people clicking on my stuff. I don't care about booking or purchases. I don't care about anything. Or actually, I want to have more engagement of my customers. I want them to return more often. So what is a good signal for knowing that the customers will come back? I don't know, adding to a wish list, creating a more well-defined profile, you know, so you really can make questions about happiness or sadness of your product, and then you have a baseline. And again, this is an iterative process. If the company changes the strategy from one day to the other, then all the metrics probably will need to change, you know. So you don't really need, I think there are lots of frameworks to start with. Like, I don't know, R, it's one example that people use. Like you have like a really good set of metrics for specific parts of the funnel. And just start with the frameworks, iterate to see if those at least in the beginning would match, to verify sadness or happiness that you might have with your product, and that's it. Other than that,
I see.
with stakeholders.
Yeah, I would also add, like, from my experience about setting these metrics and defining what number you would like to see is to grow. We actually like had some kind of misleading or like made some not wrong decisions, but we had some misleading hints in this regards. We were matching respondents to surveys. And basically, when respondent completes the survey, first of all, they complete the survey, and we also earn some money. So we naturally thought, we want to optimize revenue per transaction. So the more revenue we make, the better. But and the other option would be to optimize conversion conversion. And we thought about, in the end, we want more revenue, so we should focus on revenue. But that was actually hitting the conversion in a bad way. So better revenue means that the conversion actually went down, and we saw some long-term consequences for that. So there was also a lesson for us to think not just like money, but what your product adds and how like the long term how it's going to work.
Exactly. And if you have like like you think about your product and you have a good strategy for that, it doesn't even need to be a good strategy. If you have a strategy that you
It's
can
already an
like
achievement,
guide,
right?
because it guides you a lot, you know, like if you're randomly doing stuff for your product, that's bad unless you're like really good on experimentation. But if you don't have like clarity on where you want to go, I think like the metrics will be bad, and it's independent if it's like data science based or even manual based, you know, like solution. Yeah.
I see. So for example, okay, you have you decided on your metric, you decided how you want to grow it, and that's your objective for some period, for quarter, for example. How then the actual roadmap for the team is going to look like?
Okay, so that also depends on each company. Like, I don't know, if there are companies that they do plannings every quarter, there are companies that it's like every 6 months. There are like ones that just like no plan, is like only the backlog, and you make sure that's always prioritized, and there's like common trust across the business. So let me just, I think my battery is running low. I shouldn't.
Ooh.
Let me just do this and things will be fixed. So sorry.
No problem. We don't want to lose you. I just started with my questions.
That's good. Okay.
And now we lost him. Claudio, I think I don't hear you. Oh, it's better. Yeah. Yeah, now I can hear you.
I'm not sure if you can hear me. Like,
I
just
can.
1 minute.
I hear you now.
I can't hear you, so I'm just moving a bit.
No problem.
Super sorry about that. I think I'm.
We just to pause to make everyone intrigued.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
No, I can't hear you. So
oh,
let me do one thing.
Okay, people in the chat, if you have more questions, now it's time to type them in while we are waiting for Claudio.
Hello.
Hey.
Okay, sorry. So I think my battery was not connected somehow, and it messed the sound. So let's get back. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we were talking about roadmaps.
Yeah, so it really depends on how your company is structured in terms of like the slicing, the discovery and execution across the year. But so basically what we've been doing, I mean, from Zalando and also for Hostelworld, is really taking, okay, which are the things that we have more clarity now. So there is a sliding. Let me go one step back. Like, here is a sliding window. So when you're planning the upcoming quarter, you probably did some discovery already. Like, you know what are the problems to solve, you know, or how to measure more or less the products that you want to build. You have the planning for the quarter, and then you execute that. Then you have like the regular sprints or whatever approach that each company would follow. So in this discovery phase, so you kind of know exactly what, you kind of bring more clarity on what you want to build. And that's how the roadmaps are also like done for regular product management, like the regular product management approach. And that happens the same for data science. So usually we might have some discovery that needs some coding. I don't know, like, should we do like in a specific A/B test first to validate if our hypothesis is true or not? I don't know. Let's build a ranking algorithm, like everybody that comes to Host a World, they would see ranking properties being ranked in a way, I don't know, reviews, the amount of reviews. And then we have a hypothesis that actually customers are more interested in the pictures and also on the description of the hostel. So we have the assumption that having this information in the data science product, like the ranking algorithm itself, would make a better make a difference to that. So sometimes you can allocate some time for building smaller increments of that product and A/B test that before you say, actually, I want to go full force on that. And this is the step where you have like some hacks. You do you train your model somewhere, and you generate like a CSV file, and it just works for a specific time in your A/B test. And you validate your hypothesis that, oh, actually there is an influence here. And then you, on your planning, your roadmap, like planning your roadmap for the upcoming quarter, you already had like validated some assumptions. So you really kind of need to be a bit creative on what can you test and how can you validate hypotheses before going full force on a final solution. Getting an environment, infrastructure. The data engineering team did the whole data manipulation for you already. So it really depends. You don't want to involve lots of people before knowing that the hypothesis is true or false. So, and everything related to the quarter, like I'm saying quarter because it's the way that we're working, but then everything is related to the quarter. You have already, like, which are the metrics that measure success or not. So you need to make sure that everything that is in that quarter actually moves that needle, like it moves to the success that you expect for your product. If there's lots of random stuff coming to your planning, then it's either a problem of it could be, sometimes it can happen, but like usually it's a problem of lack of vision, like you don't have a good strategy for your product. You don't know what you want to optimize, like you don't know how to bring impact to your product. So, but that's really it, like experimentation in the phase of discovery, like trying things in the most, I don't know, low resource way that you possibly can. Then once you validate hypothesis, you turn that as a thing for your roadmap. Yeah.
I see. Actually, like before going a bit deeper in this, I think it's a super important question. What is actually now the relationship between a product person and data science lead or data science person in this process of defining what to do, where the ideas are coming from, who decides, who prioritizes?
Yeah, I think, again, depends on the team.
Yeah.
So the dynamics that we've been, I'm kind of lucky that the teams that I worked were already on this vibe, let's say, where we had a product manager on the field looking for problems, like which are the problems we need to solve. And we have we had always like a tech lead or like a data science lead or like a machine learning lead, or that depends on also the title of the company. But like someone that would validate, hey, you know, this is too far off. Like we don't even know how to do that. Or this image classification fancy thing, we don't even have infrastructure for that. So like how you want us to build a solution. So you having like a technical person on the discovery phase, like already listening to the problems and already like guiding you, it's really helpful, I would say. So there is also like this balance of like when to involve the whole team, because I mean, people will be doing execution, they want to be coding, and they want to be focused on their stuff, not discussing hypotheses or if the problem is actually true or not, you know, like in really on the green phase, let's say, of that. Once you have more, like you have more mature definition of the problem, you know already like some boundaries that you can go in the technical perspective because the team lead was with you, then it's much easier to discuss with the team, like, hey, you know, this is the problem. We want to measure it this way. This is how we see this metric that we want to measure today, and we want to make it double. I don't know if this double is your goal. So then you involve the team, and then the team would come with a solution, you know, like explicitly this solution that needs to be built. If this needs to be, I don't know, written in a specific way, what's the architecture design of that, and that you already have in the let's say on the execution mode of that. Usually what I do is like every year I write a strategy paper for the whole year, like what actually we want, answering like I did when I started Host the World, like asking which are the 3 things that you want to get solved. So then from there, I said like, okay, which are the things in the company that moves towards solving those 3 problems? Then I involved the engineers, engineering leads, to say like, oh, this is plausible. This is super big. Like, never touched this area of the code. Like, this would involve much more like resources in terms of infrastructure that we don't have now to allocate, and so on. So it already gave me like some smaller set of things that I can focus. And then the product managers are like, oh, actually, which are the problems that exist here? Do the discovery. The team already knows what's the direction, which are the boundaries. So then it's really natural, you know, like everybody understands the problem. We know how to measure. Like, we do a deeper discovery to really define the features. The engineering is involved on the technical aspect, and the product manager doesn't write any ticket, let's say, like any solution ticket, unless you need to. But that's it. Like, once it's kind of this exercise of involving engineering leads in the beginning, because you don't put so much noise to the team when you're still in doubt, you know.
Yeah. And this hypothesis that you mentioned, or for example, let's say like your goal to improve recommendation, some metrics related to recommendation, and that means improving the recommendation model. And like naturally, you probably think, okay, we want to try add those new features to the model, or we want to try a different model. Is it usually coming from the data science team, or it usually comes from the product?
Depends. So how to build, like, which are the features, like, so what's the information to add to the model so that something gets better? It usually could come from the data, like the engineers. But like, if you're like a product manager and you did some interviews with some customers, or you just, I don't know, you A/B tested something and you found out that actually people are clicking more because on properties, in the case of HostWord, that has like a picture of a room first. Then you can say like, oh, you know, there is a hunch here. What can we do, engineers? Like, what's the solution that you would think that we can do? and they will come up with
I
like the
see.
final thing.
I
But the
see.
ideas can come from everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think it's the product manager is like someone that is like having the radar, you know, like listening to
Listening to
customers,
everyone.
listening to stakeholders,
Yeah.
what the engineers are saying, and then then you're in this process of evaluating what's the size of the impact, who should be involved, the size of like a solution by having the word from the tech lead,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. I mean,
And have you ever had the actual conflict where you as a product manager think that you need to go in this direction in terms of solution and the data science lead or things different?
well, yeah, but usually those discussions, well, I think it's hard to pinpoint like one specific example because sometimes this happens a lot and it's not necessarily a problem, you know?
Yeah,
So because I mean, you would have like, even sometimes in the team, you have like someone with lots of experience in the code and comes like a new person, more junior sometimes, and just had like a good insight and like he wants to do that thing. And usually the team would be like looking for the senior persons, like, oh, let's go with the senior, even though, you know, the other person potentially had a better idea. So this is like a problem of the communication of the team, or the ways of working of the team, instead of being a problem of product management, you know?
yeah.
So I think it's more like trying to understand who is involved in what step of the discussion. If you have counter arguments, like you can there was like one thing that I liked at Zalando, that we had this value what's like disagree and commit. So if you disagree of something, like you commit to prove why that thing you're disagreeing with the other person, but in a sane and respectful way. So I would say like, okay, we have a disagreement. I think of A, you think of B. Can we do your scenario, which is faster in the engineering side, and we do that as an A/B test, or we just let it run for some specific time and we do the other version. Sometimes the costs doesn't make a better decision, but then you say like, let's do this other one too, and we really evaluate, because then what we want to see actually is not if A is better than B by the solution design. You want to see if A is better than B by moving the metric that you decided for success. So so it's really like an agreement, you know, like sitting down, like, okay, I accept that your opinion is different. So by having our different opinions, which one probably would use less resources? What's the faster can we test before building everything? So it's a conversation. So
Well, this comes to the topics of actual the proper leadership and how to make this conversation end up in the positive outcome. And in terms of okay, like you now agreed what to do. I think like the biggest difference of data science work compared to engineering is uncertainty, and sometimes like it takes us, you don't know how much time it takes, you cannot actually predict the outcome. How do you deal with that, especially when it comes to actual, I don't know, sprint or like week planning? How do you plan? How do you actually like plan execution on the regular basis?
Yeah. So I had. So let me compare like kind of two experiences. So at Zalando, we knew some problems. Like we wanted to solve specific problems for the stylists, for example. And so we were mostly open. We had, let's say, the whole quarter to solve one specific problem. Instead of having smaller features, let's say, we'd say like, okay, we have a bigger scope, and we're doing research and experimenting that until we reach the end of the quarter. If we reach the end of the quarter, we see if we made progress or not. Okay. Sometimes this is like you have lots of time, probably you don't have that amount of time available for you, then you need to come with like a just a balance of what is the next thing that you can do. So then bring into the case of Hostelworld, for example, like we have this machine learning team working on the marketing area. We do weekly plannings, so it's not like a full sprint, regular like 2 week sprint and so on. It's like we have a goal, like well-defined measurement of what we want to reach at the end of the quarter, and the team is iterating every week because it's easier for us to validate if we're moving the right direction or not every week. Because if we do a change on Monday, next Monday we have enough data to validate if the full week data moved the need upwards or downwards. So because we have this fast experimentation timing, and it's easier for us to move things in production, the engineers can like work like week by week, showing the results that they reach, then like iterating like as often as they can. But so again, I mean, almost all my answers like it depends. So it's so bad. It's so bad. But it's really like
I think it's true. Yeah,
it is true. Like sometimes, like like when I worked for Samsung, we had it was a research team, and the products probably would be released only 5 years ahead. So you couldn't even see the thing being experimented by. But the nature of the team was, what can we do with the technologies that we are building today? What's the cutting edge technology? Like at the time, people would be like still building the 5G. So how can we make sure that all the devices at the house would be using 5G and build products or hypotheses of products that would use this technology? So it's a different kind of setting that would make you make different decisions on the planning. But again, Hostelworld has like a weekly plan for the machine learning team because we see the data changing regularly.
Yeah.
Zalando had open space. You can experiment for 3 months and see if the thing changed. And Samsung like 5 years scope. Like you just experiment 5 years. There are like some progress for sure. Like you're showing that like what you did, but it's a different timing.
I see. And by the way, I totally understand this "it depends" type of answer. What I really appreciate that you give like different examples in different companies how it actually works, so then everyone can at least know from what type of options they can choose.
Oh, yeah,
sure. So
sure.
that's already like much better than nothing. And as also like being a stakeholder for data science teams, this approach experiment for 3 months, and then we see if it's moving the needle or not. It's a bit scary. It's like, okay, for 3 months and then we get nothing. So maybe you can tell us your experience. How do you explain to stakeholders, which always expect, okay, I invest this amount of money in this team. In 3 months, I want to have 2x growth in revenue. How do you explain to them and how you manage their expectations? What your pitch to high-level management or investors?
That's a hard question. Like that's a hard question, but it doesn't really. It applies also for any product that you build, and
it's just uncertainty. It feels even higher here.
Exactly. Well, I think the problem. I think the problem that I faced mostly with stakeholders was explainability. So ranking is one case. Like if you are sorting the products of your homepage, in the case of Hostelworld, let's say, you can have the sales team asking you like how the sorting works, and you could just say like, actually, we take lots of input from the customer behavior, we take lots of input of the properties, blah blah. We decide that this is how it needs to be ranked as a target function, let's say, and the algorithm just does that. And the question is like, okay, but like, can you explain that to me so I can explain to properties? Can I explain to someone else? And this clarity is really hard to bring when you're working with machine learning. I mean, you can explain a lot the data, but you can say like, oh, we give more weight to the rating, and then we give less weight to clicks, and then it's hard to explain in a concrete hierarchical, let's say, flow chart. You can't do a flow chart, let's say. So I think that this is the most critical problem I've been facing with stakeholders. Not a problem, but like recurrent discussion that you need to have. Like sometimes if you're like in automation teams, like automating a process, you have like people are not sharing knowledge because they fear for their jobs. Like, oh, if this machine will be automating my job, I'll lose my job. What should I do, and so on. So I think that I see more problems on this aspect of like the use of the product, because about the time, like things take time. It's a regular discussion. Like, oh, we thought that we could do like we could solve the problem with the solution, and it's actually not there. So one approach that you can take is slice sometimes the problem in smaller steps, and these smaller steps, all the stakeholders are super clear on what you're doing. Let's taking like randomly also changing the example even for ranking, like, oh, we believe that we could add 5 additional data points of customer behavior to better ranking. And you say like, okay, let's do one release only with then after that we have the second and the third, and every release you involve the stakeholders, like you do demos, you make sure that they are part of this, of understanding the solution. Like when the engineers are explaining the effects of the change, you have at least someone from the stakeholder set, let's say, that you have in listening to that too, because that helps. Like it helps on building up the knowledge and helps building up also trust from the stakeholders on what are the difficulties, what are the decisions you're making, like of deep the prioritization decisions, let's say. Yeah, but I think it's more involving people.
Like an
It's
art.
again, it's a leadership thing. It's really like it's not everything we're talking here. There's nothing to do with data science. It's like mostly leadership.
It's just art. Well, that's
Yeah.
good, because the main theme of the whole event is leadership. So I think like we are super aligned. I actually have also a couple of really nice questions here in the chat. So before we wrap up the event, I would like to read them and ask them, and that's for everyone who's watching, that's your last chance to ask questions, add them to the chat. The one is on vision, so that was back to the beginning of our conversation. What a good vision on product level is for you? How do you recognize it? When does it, or what does it look like? The good vision.
What a good vision is. A vision is a dream of what you expect of your company to be. Like it's the same question that you would receive, like how do you see yourself in the next 5 years, So I think a good vision is like it's actually more related on how much you trust on the image you expect for the future of your company. Like, I don't know, Zalando had this, we want to be the starting point of fashion. That's a really like a vision. How we will achieve that, it depends on the strategy, like defining the steps, but actually that's how they want to be. for hostel world is like we want to make sure that the travelers can meet the world, meet the location, and meet other people. So that's a really intrinsic thing that everybody in the company should be aligned. So a good vision is like you measure of how many people actually in your company trusts on the same image that you had for your company. So it's there is no metric for that to say like, oh, it needs to contain 2 verbs, 1 adjective, and so on. Like it's really like if everybody that works on your company thinks that the perspective of your company in the next 5 years or whatever horizon you have makes them excited, then you have a good vision. This vision also is validated in every step. Like if you have a metric to define if you're there or not, that helps you to see if it's a bad or like a good or bad vision.
Mhm.
If it's like for hostel world, we can't make the people meet each other. We can't make the people find the right assortment. Well, our vision is bad. Like probably it's either bad or we're building things that are not actually aligned to the thing that we wanted to build. So I think that's it. I mean, I would feel like that. Yeah.
That's super interesting. Yeah, this vision is like such a difficult topic because yeah, it's a big struggle, I think, for everyone, like to define like a good vision and to
The definition is super hard. The definition is super hard. I mean, the process of defining that, I can imagine that it's super hard. But I mean, how to validate if it's a good or bad, which was the question. Then I think it's if at least your team really gets inspired of that, and if you're building things that goes towards this direction, that's a good measurement that you're going in a good way.
I see. Okay, another question. Oh, this is a good one. I'm gonna leave it till the end. How to roughly estimate the cost of machine learning solution? Sometimes it could be super expensive, and maybe it's even does not make any sense to develop it.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you need to involve the engineering leads in the beginning of the discussions. Like, so at Visual Meta, actually, like we had a discussion of let's use. So imagine that we found 95% of the pages are fulfilled with really good quality products. But we had like issues. Let's say if you're opening a new country, what do you do? If you want to, if the country doesn't speak the writing system is not the very same like writing system that we have, the machine learning solutions are different too. And we were like, oh, the next 5 percentage points to reach the 100%, we could use images. And then like, okay, so if we want to use images, this would take much more time. We need to think about like expensive training. The things can take, instead of 24 hours, which was our goal, can take longer for those specific countries. So this came from a discussion with the engineering lead of like, out of all solutions, which are the ones that are viable or not? And today, I mean, if you're running on the cloud, I think you know how often you would use CPU, how often you use GPU, in some cases memory, and so on. And you can kind of calculate if it's running, if to train a model, it takes 7 hours. Usually, you know more or less how to calculate how what's the cost and like what's the bill size that you would have in the end of the month. So again, it's measuring the cost really and more accurately would really depend if you have engineering people discussing the potential solutions of that. And even before testing, we knew that going to the image approach, image direction would be much more expensive. And then comes like, I don't know, if we go to China and we see that the market is like 1 million, I don't know, people probably using our product, and they bring X amount of revenue. Does this pay the effort of doing training on like a large cluster for images and so on? If it's worth it, I mean, costs, it's fine, you know, like let's assume this bill. So it's also comes like on how much of discovery you understand, how much did you understand actually the problem you had beforehand. Yeah. And if you know the metric, you know if
And
the
if you have
cost
the
pays off
vision.
or not. And if you have the vision.
I
Yeah.
see, I see. Okay, and yeah, that's the question that I left till the end. It's related to creativity. We spoke with Claudio about creativity before the start. What role does creativity play when it comes to leading a team? How do you nurture creativity in your teams?
How do I nurture creativity? How do I nurture creativity? I was talking about creativity before because I'm like I get really inspired by the signals of the environment. Like if I see people dressing differently or different kinds of behaviors or patterns, like I think that's why I like data science. But like I like to see that, and then I get creative and I new ideas from the fresh eyes, let's say, or signals from my eyes. So how do I nurture creativity? I think creativity comes from freedom of making the people use their portfolio of knowledge. You know, like if you have people in your team that has lots of, I don't know, some are musicians, some are like good cookers, some are like super into sports and so on. They would bring some stuff to the discussion that they learned from these other activities that they have. So when you put people to talk and they have the freedom to talk about solutions, when they really understand the problem, instead of like giving like, oh, I want the button in the right 2 pixels red, blah, 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 this, you cut the creativity of the team. So I think it's more like being super clear on the problem, leaving the team to decide for the solutions, and the creativity would be natural. I think everybody's creative in a different way. So that's how I try to nurture, let's say, on the teams, like really giving them the freedom to decide on what to do. And well, I mean, doing different things with I mean, if you're doing team building, if there's something that you would do, then like to be more, I don't know, more personal, really understand each other, like from what the people like and so on. Because sometimes, I don't know, I don't like sports. It's one of the things. I mean, we probably don't need to record this part, but like it's already live. It's already live. Yeah. No, but I don't like much sports. But I by listening to the people talking about sports, makes me like have a different view. And every time that I see something different, like which is related to sports, and I know someone from the team that likes that thing, like surfing, which one of the cases, then I just share with this person, you know, like, hey, I just found out that, you know, that there's a Brazilian guy doing surfing and blah, blah. So check this out. And then, you know, you start sharing things like, oh, the person would probably answer like, oh, I know this guy. It was like 3 times champion. And you know, how is the routine of eating of this person? And then a person knows that I like eating. And then, you know, it brings you some different things to your own portfolio, and the whole environment gets creative. I don't know, like, but I think that's how I nurture. Yeah.
I like, how do you call it, this portfolio of knowledge. And I like from my experience, Claudio, also working with you, I think you always like find creative ways to solve and approach problems. And like you mentioned many times during the our conversation today, oh, I would just have a conversation, or like I would just like try to discuss, and it feels like in your case you actually use your creativity a lot in your leadership role to find a right approach to every person. And
Well,
because I'm looking like with my community, I'm like looking for concrete answers to concrete questions. And maybe I'm contradicting myself with the statement, but it's really I think like how you use it.
So I think, so how do I use it? I think it's like, I don't like to be right alone. That's one like basic thing that I have. I don't want, if there's not like, and I think it comes from data science too. If I don't have enough sample size to validate a hypothesis, I don't go for this hypothesis. So of course I have lots of bias. Of course that I, by experiences, like, let's do that because I know that will be right and so on. Probably happens, not probably that, but will happen somehow. But I think it's more like, I try to ask many like really random people. Like if I take someone, like when we worked together, I would say, like, if I have a problem, I would tell this problem to a person that was not involved with the thing. And I would just discuss about it. Like, hey, you know, I'm having this issue. This problem is this way and so on. What do you think about it? So I want to see different perspectives, and probably I will come back to the team and like, hey, you know, I talked to Svetlana. She told me about that and she brought with these ideas. What actually do you think, team? You know, so, and when you said like what you do in terms of leadership, one thing that I've learned when I was like studying, one of the professors said like the mastery of management is delegation. So
yeah, they always say that, right?
Yeah, I do. I really always say that. And it's like the master of management is delegation, but it's not the delegation of like, oh, this is not my job. Like I would just send that to someone. It's really like making the others also be part of the process, you know. And that's it. I mean, as much people you have to make like a suggestion, or even if it's only an opinion, you have more information to make at least a more assertive decision. Because sometimes you don't have enough data, you don't have clarity. Sometimes it's a bug and you need to make a decision now, like, should I deactivate the full product now because it's crashing everything? What comes next? What should I do put like in place? So it's really like making sure that I can involve as much as I can, the more diverse people I can to the discussion.
Mm-hmm. I see.
Yeah,
you see our conversation like becomes like really philosophical.
yeah. But leadership is kind of like
it's
that.
leadership, it's philosophical, right? To wrap up, from what I heard, it feels that it like all the questions or like all the specifics of data science type of products, it actually goes back to the basic principles of product management. And when you did the right things at the beginning of defining like a product's problem space and what you want to achieve, then many questions on the actual execution with data science, the answer to this question, they come naturally. Then basically the last question, do you actually see a difference in product management for machine learning type of products versus the rest, or like normal other type of products, or not?
Well, I think it's a bit different because the set of solutions you can offer is a different is a different set. Like, so when you're doing data science, you really need to think more on the data you have available instead of building the logic itself. You know, like thinking about the nitty-gritty details. Like, I don't know, let's take a customer segmentation problem. Like, you can segment customers, like if customers did more than 3 purchases in the last 3 months, do something like put these people together. And then you can create lots of rules and you have your segmentation. Machine learning approaches, I have my customer data, do something with an algorithm. It's a black box. It will give me like some clusters, like some areas of like the segments itself. And then someone would read the segments and say like, oh, actually, this is segment VIP customer. This is like A++. This is B customer, and blah, blah, blah. So just one example. So it's a bit different because you need to think only on the data perspective and how the data interacts, instead of like thinking about specific business rules. So it's a little bit less stressful, let's say, but it comes with the like the onus, let's say, that you need to know you need to try to give explainability to stakeholders for something that's only data based. It's like it's a black box. So I think the difference of the product management style is mostly like, how can I explain more problems using only data instead of explaining the solution with specific step-by-step, you know, like you can clearly build like a flow chart and explain that. So yeah, I think that would be the difference. Other than that, I don't see much. Yeah, I mean, after some time, like you're doing data science, you know already like some tools, what you can do, what's the limitations, and so on, and it helps you a lot on having such kind of discussions. But overall, it's really like a product management role, like a regular one, as you say.
Well, thank you, Claudio, for answering all these questions and for spending your fun day or like fun time of the day of the week with us.
It's a pleasure.
It was super insightful. It's gonna be available on YouTube in some hours, so you can share it with all your friends or rewatch it again. And subscribe to our Meetup group, YouTube channel, everything to not miss our next conversations. And if you have some follow-up questions, just send them to me or send them to Claudio. He's just doing his full-time job and PhD, but the rest of the time he's super available to answer all your questions.
I'm available to answer. Right. Probably I will be taking some time, but happy to answer anything. Go into the details if you need. And thanks for the questions, and really fun to talk to you.
Perfect. Then have a good evening, everyone, and amazing weekend. It's Friday night.
Enjoy.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
So end the stream.